Hello there and welcome to another edition of the Evening Review. My name is Ogito Greg, and in studio with me this evening we have Mr. Nobel Eiaseb. He is the founder and executive director of the Association of Young Generation in Nuclear of Namibia. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening. I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Please share with us a little bit of your background in terms of education and how your interest in nuclear science started.
Okay. So I'm a specialist mining engineer by profession. I did my professional engineering retraining at the prestigious Moscow Mining Institute. Did my specialist mining engineering diploma also in Moscow at the Moscow Mining Institute. I did my Masters of Business Administration at Regent Business School. Masters of Commerce, I did it at Mancosa. And I'm currently in the final stages for my doctorate in business administration at the Namibian Business School. So being an engineer by profession, one understands that we like making changes and being innovative and creative. So I had recently participated in a regional nuclear expo. So it sparked my interest and also aligned with my engineering background and also the studies that I did at the commission where I was working. Because we would do, let's say, for example, national strategic policies and so forth. So there was a spark that actually interested me. That's how I came about this.
Okay. And you founded the Association for Young Generation in Nuclear of Namibia. Why?
The interest that I realized is because, look, we are the first largest producer of uranium in Africa, the third largest in the world. So one thing that I always do, and I'm always very adamant about, is understanding what is coming and what needs to happen. So as our president always alludes to, we want to bring back our industries to Namibia. So with that, we want to bring mineral beneficiation within our own borders. So we don't want to be a next exporter of our resources. We want to bring these resources back to our country. So with that, one thing one needs to understand is, how do I contribute to this dream that is alive? So with that, I thought about it like, look, where do I contribute in this? Because we don't only want to be complaining about not being unemployed or just being like, let's say, graduates on the street and so forth. What we want to do is we want to be involved in the sector that is coming. So ensuring that there is a stream and a strong ecosystem and a pipeline being created for the nuclear industry that is nascent to Namibia is something that is very, very important. And I believe that was one of the critical areas.
Okay. How long have you been working on setting up NAMYGN, and what were some of the obstacles that you had to overcome?
So, there's always, the idea always comes and then you'd park it because, every time people think about nuclear, they are thinking there's these war-related aspects to it. So, you also have to do a lot of research and understanding, how do I ensure that this organization is not going to be a problem for my country? How do I make it that it is civilian? How do I ensure that it benefits the masses? So with that said, one thing that you understand is the idea always starts early, and then the ensuring that you bring in the right people. Because one thing that I wanted to ensure was to ensure that we have a strong executive advisory board, and also to ensure that we have a strong patriot that is aligned with our objectives, and also to ensure that we have a board of directors that is diverse. So not only involving young people, but also people that have critical skills, people that have critical experience, and people that have influence in the industry, and also ensuring that with that, setting up the governance structure. So it takes quite a bit of a time, but then once you do the official registration, then all systems go.
Okay, and has the organization grown?
Quite a bit we have grown, because one thing that we are currently also doing strongly is we are doing strong membership drive, because now for the first year that we actually now officially registered, one thing we want to do is we have waived all the membership applications. So membership fees we will not charge for the year, because we need to bring members on board and also have this demystification, a strong drive of demystification of nuclear. So with that, the growth is quite exponential, because our LinkedIn pages are growing, our Facebook pages are growing, and our WhatsApp pages are growing. So we are looking at areas of how do we now reach the masses? How do we reach the secondary school learners that are in STEM and also in STEAM? And because one thing that we want to do away with is just talking about STEM, because look, we are excluding the people that are from the arts and the humanities. So we need to involve them also in that, because let's say, for example, a journalist, an orator, let's say motivational speaker needs to be involved in this sector. And with nuclear, the great thing about nuclear is you can just upskill a person in that area to be able to align with the nuclear sector. So that's what we are actually looking at.
Okay, awesome. Tell us about your affiliation with the Africa youth in generation of nuclear?
Okay, so the Africa Young Generation in Nuclear is our is our continental mother body, and then we are falling under the International Youth Nuclear Congress, which is now the international partner. So my involvement there is I've recently been appointed to the Continental Communications and Publicity Committee, where I'm serving, and with that, what we do is we bring our foot on in the door, and with that, Namibia's voice is also being heard. The critical area that we want to ensure is that the Namibian voice is not just heard in Namibia. We want it to be heard on the SADC level, we want it to be heard on the continental level and on the international level. And of course, the idea is to eventually be in the under the auspices of the IAEA, and also ensure that when there is a conversation about nuclear being had, whether that is in the presidential task force, whether that is in committees that are being set up, whether that is on the international, let's say, delegations that have to go to, for example, to go speak on nuclear, there must be a youth voice that is actually capacitated and skilled to speak on this. So that is one of the ideas that we are having.
Okay. And what are the goals of the Africa organization?
So one thing that is critical about the Africa Young Generation Nuclear is we want to create awareness throughout the whole continent.
Okay.
We understand that Africa is a net exporter of her resources. We want to bring back mineral beneficiation to the continent. We want Africa to be able to sit at the right tables at the right time and have the right conversations and make the right decisions, because we are left behind, and we want to do away with that. As the youth and the young generation that is involved in the future development of this country and this continent at large, is we want to be able to say, look, if I am going to be running this country in the next 20 years, if I'm going to be the president in this country or if I'm going to be at the AU at this in a couple of years, what structures am I putting in place right now that are going to capacitate the young person that is coming after me to be able to sit at the table and be capacitated to actually speak about what they need to speak about and understand what they're speaking about, not just being wheelbarrowed into position, basically.
Yeah. Just to repeat.
Yes, yes.
You are very passionate about demystifying nuclear science. Why is that so important?
One thing that I always say is the demystification of nuclear is something that is very, very important, because we need to break down this taboo that nuclear is only about nuclear bombs or power plants and so forth.
Yes.
We want people to understand that nuclear can be used in medicines, it can be used in the agricultural sphere, it can be used for research and development of the country, and also bring in reducing poverty, let's say breaking down social ills, because once a person is involved, let's say holistically involved in the industries of the country, there is no time to actually have time for basically doing nonsense. So we want to ensure that the Namibian voice, in particular the African voice, is being heard, and the young person's voice is being heard, and they're being involved in the holistic economic development and the ecosystem of the country.
But is it important for the everyday Namibian to have a good understanding of nuclear science?
Very, very important, because remember, we are faced with food scarcity issues.
Yes.
We are having water scarcity issues.
Yes.
Now, nuclear comes in there, whether that is now through your isotopic hydrogeology, whether that is now through irradiation in the food industry, or whether that is now looking at the shelf life, how do we reduce or increase and so forth, and also now fighting germs, or also, let's say, increasing crop yields and soil fertility. So nuclear is very important, because let's say, for example, a cuckoo that is in the village in her mahango field, how do we involve her and how do we make her understand that this nuclear sector, this thing that we're talking about, nuclear, is actually beneficial for her? Whether that is now, let's say, for example, somebody that is having they need to dig very, very deep for water sources.
Yeah.
Now, understanding that by using nuclear science and technology, how do we reduce that? How do we reduce the cost and so forth? So it is very relevant and it is very important.
Okay. And how has Namibia developed in terms of nuclear science?
So as we are aware, we have strong systems in place in terms of governance, and we are basically working on the nuclear bill currently. Yes. And I will not go ahead of the government to speak on that. They will speak on that. But currently, the work that is happening in the background is actually very, very structured and very, very strong, because it is multifaceted, and it's approaching whether that is now the continental level, or looking at what has worked before, what has not worked. How do we ensure that we are creating a, let's say, a civilian program for our nuclear sector? How do we ensure that the Namibians are involved? So we need to also understand that we need to learn from the mistakes that have happened before. We need to be able to allay the problems that can happen for Namibia, and also ensure that if this sector is coming, that we are not a net importer of let's say, skills or human capital. We want our people to be able to run this sector.
Okay. Not to get ahead of the government or anything, but in terms of the foreseeable future from your point of view, what does nuclear science have in store for Namibia?
So, you see, currently we are a net importer of electricity.
Yes.
We need to reduce that. Yes. We need to be able, because we cannot be, quite frankly, rejoicing for the fact that we are a net exporter of uranium, because there's a problem in that formula. There's a problem. We are exporting the uranium, but we are having food scarcity issues. Yes. We are having water scarcity issues. We're having energy issues. Yes. So there are quite a couple of people that are working on certain, let's say, for example, the small modular reactors concepts that are being worked on, because we cannot currently in our financial state let's say, afford those big plants and so forth. But there are new technologies, there are innovative and creative ways that we can go about this. And then also understanding that before we start with this industry, we need to have our frameworks in place, and they need to be very robust, and they must be able to be tested and withstand the test and so forth. So in Namibia, we are taking strides in this area, and that is also one thing of, maybe we'll discuss it as at another time, that we will be hosting quite a couple of critical conferences and let's say outreaches throughout the year on a national level, regional level, and a continental level. So Namibia is currently, our foot is in the right direction.
Okay. But isn't there a step missing? You mentioned about the fact that we export a lot of uranium. I think we are the third biggest supplier in the world, almost second. We're striving towards that. But between what we export and what is used to generate power, for instance, aren't there steps in between that we are not quite ready to do ourselves?
So you see, that's where we have partners. We are partnering with the countries that have, whether that is now your. I see our Minister of International Relations just recently went to Russia. Yes. We had conversations with perhaps with the Americans, have conversations with the Chinese, we have conversations with partners in the Middle East, or in the French, obviously the Europeans, and so forth. So one thing that we want to understand is, and one thing that we want to actually have is, how do we use the knowledge base of our partners without putting ourselves in, quite frankly, a situation where it is not to our benefit. We want Namibia to benefit, first and foremost. And with that, doing that, also understanding that we need investment. However, the investment must not come at the cost of the Namibian life. So it's very, very critical that when you're talking about this aspect, whether it's nuclear, whether you're talking about investment, it's very, very critical that we understand and that we accept the fact that things can go very wrong very, very fast. But how do you learn and how do you avert that? It's very, very important. So in that aspect, we are laying down strong, robust frameworks, and that is something that Namibia has been known for around the globe. And now the area that we need to ensure is, when we are having conversations with our partners, are these dignified conversations? Are these conversations where the Namibian voice is being respected and being heard? And it's very, very important to understand that just because you're having the resources does not necessarily mean that you are going to be the ones that is benefiting. We need to change that formula. Yeah. We need to change that formula, and it's very, very important to change that formula so that we are at the benefit.
Very good. Mr. Eiaseb, we will be right back. We're just going to take a quick commercial break, but please stay with us for more of the evening review. Welcome back to the Evening Review. My name is Ogito Greg, and in studio with me this evening is Mr. Nobel Eiaseb. He is the founder and executive director of the Association of Young Generation in Nuclear of Namibia, NAMYGN. And just before the break, Mr. Eiaseb, you were telling us about the importance of the conversations, making sure that our interaction benefits Namibia and Namibians in general. But there have been many recent developments in terms of nuclear science in Namibia. Which of those recent developments have excited you the most?
One of the critical things that I always say is we do actually have a robust nuclear conference that happens biannually, and it'll be happening this year also in October sometime, but the Atomic Energy Board will speak on that. So that is one of the things to look out for. Another one that is coming up is the uranium, because remember, we are the net exporter of uranium. Mm-hmm. We're having the uranium conference that is upcoming, and where we will also be participating as poster presenters and so forth. And also having conversations about nuclear science and technology, whether that is with stakeholders or OMAS and so forth. It is very, very critical that, and I always say this to everybody that I meet, whether you are the minister or whether you're the ED or whoever you are, whoever I meet on the street, I will talk to you about nuclear science and technology because I'm very passionate about it. So there are quite a couple of fascinating things that are coming up, and Namibia will also be hosting the CTBTO this year, the first African country that will be hosting that. I think they will speak on that. I don't want to go ahead of people to speak on their initiatives and so forth. So quite a couple of exciting things are happening.
Yes. And also what I was excited about when it first happened, just before our president was officially elected, was she spoke about nuclear power for Namibia for the first time on a public platform and continued that message through into the start of her presidency. Do you think that it's achievable? How long do you think it could be before we could benefit from nuclear power?
Okay, so as I always say, I don't go ahead of the government or speak on their behalf. One thing that I will say is this. The support is there from the government.
Okay.
If the head of state is supporting an idea,
yes,
then you are being told, look, the idea is here. How do you take it and how do you bring this to fruition?
Yes.
The young people, here's the idea. Where are you fitting in? That's why we are saying NAMYGN comes in there to create the pipeline for the human capital development, upskilling and so forth. And also to understand that and appreciate the fact that the president is passionate about ensuring that mineral beneficiation comes back to Namibia.
Yes.
That our shores are not just for exporting, but for creating ecosystems and pipelines for Namibia's development and Namibia's enrichment and so forth. And also ensuring that every Namibian household does have something on the table to eat before they go to bed. And also ensuring that the plethora of graduates that are unemployed, it is something that we need to fight with tooth and nail.
Yes.
So that's why I always say with the graduates, we already have a strong human capital. How do we just upskill those unemployed graduates? Where do we make them fit in? Because I don't think with the amount of natural resources that we have as a country that we are supposed to have any person that is actually poor in this country.
Yes.
Nobody should actually be even unemployed.
Yes.
But there are quite a couple of things that are happening in the background, and I'm sure the government is having strong conversations with partners, as I alluded to earlier, and to ensure that we do have a seat at the table where our resources matter.
Mm-hmm. You know, you allude to a very painful reality. We're a rich country full of poor people, and part of that comes from our long and equally painful history coming from colonialism into apartheid, and even now. But there's difficulties in having inclusive development, inclusive conversations. How do you think we can overcome those difficulties? How can we include everybody in the conversation?
One thing that I would actually say there is that the government of the day currently, there is a lot of inclusivity. Well, that's one thing that I would say. And also you will see with the appointments that are happening in critical areas, whether that is ambassadorial, whether that is ministerial, whether that is on ED level or so forth, we have quite a variety, whether that is through age, expertise and experience. We have quite a bit of variety there. And can we do better than that? Yes, we can. Can we involve more people? Can we involve, let's say, for example, because we are still lacking behind, because now we have moved, and the great thing that we have done is the gender parity we have achieved that.
Yes.
We have achieved that. Now we need to start talking about how do we really involve the youth. We don't just want to have slogans or advertise that we are involving the youth. When are we having the youth? For example, let's say there is a conversation being heard about whether that is now oil and gas, whether that is now nuclear, but specifically now in particular about nuclear. When we are having the Minister of International Relations, or whether that is Industries and Mines, having a conversation, having a delegation, where is that section of the youth that is actually going? Where are the technocrat youth that are involved? Where are the experts that are involved? Because we need to do one thing, and I also always say this, is we need to depoliticize when it comes to the development of the country. We need to bring any and everybody that is qualified, skilled, and experienced on board, because we are building the Namibian house, as our late president would say, may his soul rest in peace, Dr. Hakakengo.
Yes.
So ensuring that we have achieved quite a bit of leeway, but can we do better? Yes, definitely we can do better.
Yeah. Let's put the focus back on NAMYGN. What are the prospects for the rest of this year? Any plans? And also for the Africa body, what are you expecting for 2026?
Okay, so let me start off the mother body, so or maybe the international body, because this year there will actually be a summit in France, Avignon, where there will be the biannual summit. So that is happening. There are quite a bit of technical things that we are going to be doing, especially on the continental level with AYGN, and with NAMYGN. We are very, very deliberate about where we want to achieve ourselves, because we want OMAs to come on board. We want partners to come on board, because look, you can have this great idea, but if you're not getting support on the national level, if you're not getting support from the people that are supposed to support you, quite frankly, then it is a dead fish in the water. So what we want, we do have quite a couple of critical strategic meetings lined up, whether that is with your universities or your institutions of higher learning, with OMAs, private sector, public, and so forth. So we do have quite a couple of plans, and also partnerships is something that is very critical for us. So we are in talks, whether that is now through the memorandums of understanding where does NAMYGN fit into, for example, where does it fit into the media space? How do we come about where we can have, for example, a weekly show discussing nuclear science and development, thereby also demystifying this thing, and also understanding how do we take this sector and make people understand, a layperson understand, without having any, let's say, for example, complicated conversations, breaking it down and making a person understand, and also attending conferences, strategic webinars, and so forth. So the ones that come to mind currently, we have been invited to the Horn of Africa Institute of Peace and Security, where we'll be participating on critical talks on disinformation and instability. Remember, currently the globe is very, very unstable. There's too much vitality there. And also the uranium conference that is upcoming on the 26th to 27th of March. Definitely we are looking at getting involved with the CTBDO, and also the uranium conference that is upcoming. So besides also outreaches, so we want to have nationwide outreaches where we will go through the whole 14 regions of the country, have conversations, whether that is on grassroots level with local authorities, with traditional leaders, and so forth. So quite a bit of outreach needs to happen, and awareness, because the first stumbling block here is awareness and demystifying.
Yes.
That is what needs to happen.
Yes. Some of the older generation would remember terrible nuclear power disasters of the past. What would you say to them? And for the younger people who might be inspired watching this, how do they get involved? Where can they get hold of NAMYGN?
Okay, so NAMYGN, currently we are on Facebook, we are on LinkedIn, and we have a WhatsApp group. So once you go to, like right now I'm seeing NAMYGN is just exploding all over, because we are now becoming visible. So if you go to any of the Facebook page or the LinkedIn page, I've pinned all the let's say the registration links on there, and then you can also join the WhatsApp group there too, because we always share, let's say, policy briefs, whether that is related to nuclear. We share all the scholarships that are being availed, whether that is from the Europeans, the Americans, the Middle East partners, the Russians, and so forth, or whatever from the Asian side. And also we do share webinars, because one thing that we need to understand is we need to share knowledge.
Yes.
So webinars from critical and strategic stakeholders and so forth. And also, if we come back to the older generation with the situations of the past,
and the fears.
And the fears. And you know, I always say it is, the fear is rightfully there because they have experienced that or they have seen firsthand what has happened in those areas. But so that's the area where we come in to say, look, how do we demystify this? How do we take a person's understanding or perhaps that fear that, look, nuclear, I just think about bombs. How do we take that and ensure that a person understands how does this fit into the medicinal field? How does this cure cancer? How is this being used to, let's say, allay water scarcity issues? How does it work to help us in the agricultural field because we're an agriculture-based economy?
Yes.
And also understanding how do we use this to, for example, allay climate change, because that is the new thing of that is happening. So nuclear is clean energy as it's being said and being proven currently. So as I said before, demystification, awareness raising, and ensuring that everybody understands where we are going, why we are going there, and how we need to get there together.
Thank you, sir. We're almost out of time. I would just like you to leave our viewers with a parting message.
Okay. So one thing that I would always say is understand where you are, appreciate where you want to go, but be mindful of how you need to get there, because one thing you need to understand is if you are creating skeletons on your way, when you get to the place where you're supposed to get to, eventually those skeletons are going to come back to haunt you.
Thank you very much. That's a very powerful message. And thank you all very much for joining us on the evening review. Tomorrow evening there will be something else, a different topic, so please join us again. For now, good night. Till then, goodbye.